All right, so let's take a minute and let's talk about calories, what they are, what they try to be in nutrition, and why they fail at measuring the energy um, in nutrition. And so, calorie is this unit, it's this measurement of heat transfer, right? That when a chemical reaction happens, which means you have to instigate it in some way, um, you have to initiate the process. That heat can be measured with water temperature changing, um, which is, if you create a standard is made, and so you can reference it from there. And so we try to, with Helmholtz and Rubner, we understood that we could create heat with carbs, fats, and proteins, and that is true with thermoregulation, because what happens in the ATP, in the mitochondria, it either can resynthesize ATP, which is the chemical your muscle uses for energy, or that process cannot happen, and because there's a little motor in there that turns and that binds the ATP together. That motor doesn't have, it could become uncoupled, which means it doesn't grab onto the ATP and doesn't rebind it. It leaves an open channel. And so the energy that would have been used to transfer that to reconnect that ATP is used to generate heat instead. And the entire process uses heat anyways. And as the process is trying to recover more ATP, it can't, because it's uncoupled at the end. And so it just generates heat. And that's how your body generates heat. And so in the 1800s, we thought we started to understand how energy could be transferred between forces, and so we thought if we could measure the heat of these elements, then we also are measuring the muscular force of these elements. And this was not agreed on by everyone. There's a couple of different writings where Max Rubner's professor Carl von Voigt didn't publish his work on this calorie law for about 10 years, because he didn't agree that this necessarily leads to the other. He was also on the idea that protein is what drove it. Protein reaction and breakdown was what drove muscle reaction. So he was much more on a much more material basis, which would later be proven correct with ATP. But Rubner was much more on an energy dynamics basis, and he even confesses that he does not believe materials can explain energy in 1902, which is 5 years after we discovered the electron, ironically. And so it's from that idea that if you measure heat, you can measure the energy that is within the molecule. And that's true to a sense, but it's not true for everything. Like, you can't measure the calories of water, even though water provides work for the body by definition.